So my name is Ibrahim Mahama. Live and work in Ghana, Tamale, between Accra and Tamale to be specific. The work in Venice is called the Occupation Series, and I think it's part of an ongoing series called the Occupation Series, which I have been working on since the last 3 years. I started working on it in the year 2012. And it basically involves using different kinds of labor and processes and materials to build these objects which occupies structures, mostly within urban spaces. At least for now, most of the projects, that's what it's been about. So it involves working with people who have migrated from other parts of the country to the city, and then employing their daily forms of labor into the production of these various objects. And I became specifically interested in the jute sacks because of the history and the politics surrounding the material and the various commodities that is associated with, specifically cocoa and charcoal and then others. But I'm also very much interested in the contradictions embedded within these different forms of materials, being it cocoa or being it any other commodity. The reason being that the material is used to transport cocoa just once, and afterwards it's used to transport other materials. So I'm interested in this sense of transition where the material takes one form and one object which has a different value system, and then takes on another commodity which also has a totally different value system and process altogether, because of the kinds of associations and people that are associated with it through its production, and also the kinds of benefits that comes out of these systems. So my interest came into it because of the points in which these two things cross, and the various contradictions within that sphere. So I think I'm interested in that point as a point of became interested in that point as a point of departure to have further conversations. I think the people that I work with are very, very ordinary people, very, very simple, but at the same time people that lack most of the time the most fundamental things that I think every individual deserves. I mostly work with migrants, or specifically people who have migrated from other parts of the country to the city. I have worked on them on different levels through a series of dialogues, through a series of collaborations. So what we do is that they act as collaborators in a sense of how they help in the negotiation of the whole production process, and also in terms of how much they are deeply involved within the various projects that we do. It's this idea of annihilation is really, really important to me. I'm always interested in how things are produced, and at the end of the day, the kinds of distinctions that are made between the objects that are produced and then the people that produce those objects. So I think in my work, I'm trying to raise questions about the different systems, the different kinds of systems that operate, and how it constantly produces different kinds of classifications within the society that we live in. So I am basically interested in working with people not based on their kinds of skills that they have, but specifically based on the conditions in which they find themselves in. So it could be, let's say, a better condition, or not so much of a better condition. But the most important thing is that I'm always interested in this level of these tensions, and looking at it really, really closely through a series of processes and gestures to see what will come out of it. So those are the things that gives birth to these the forms of the works that, as you see, like within the arsenale. But then the form may appear within a certain aesthetical form, but then I think for me what is most important is these series of dialogues through the various relationships that I build with these workers. I'm interested in the conditions of the workers, so that's why the work takes on the forms that it takes. I think it was really inspiring, and it was really inspiring. It was really important. But then the original idea was to come with to travel with the collaborators for the installation, but it was very difficult because we had to. It was almost impossible because of the kinds of conditions I was talking about. Having a birth certificate or a passport was almost impossible to have. How much to talk about having to travel from one country to the other. So in the end, I had to work with the students from the academy, but I think the point was to work with the collaborators, with the students from the academy, and also with the technicians that I work with, because I'm always interested in what happens when you cross these different systems or these different points. Because in the previous projects that we worked on, it was always interesting to see the kinds of dialogues that came out of working with these people who didn't think that they had the rights to access these different spaces that we found ourselves in. Yes, I think social media is quite important in terms of how it operates. But I think the point of contact with the exhibition came from there, and then we developed it through a series of exchanges and other things, which led to realizing this project at the Biennale. So I think that the work is highly political, if not anything else, because aside the formal elements in the work and aside the aesthetics and all that, I think the politics of it is also really, really important to me as an artist, and that's the reason why I use the kinds of materials I use, and I work with the kinds of spaces I work with, and I work with the kinds of people that I work with. I think that we're living in a time whereby politics has become really, really important in the development of like society, because there's always a power struggle between different forms and different systems, and for me, I'm interested in that power struggle, and I'm interested in what it can become, in as much as I'm interested in what it is now and what it's always been. But I'm always interested in what can emerge out of the state of things. So if I will say, I think that the whole reason why I started doing these kinds of projects was also to open up these different forms of dialogue.